What specifically are mixed messages in dating?
When somebody tells you one thing and does another, or shows you one thing but acts a different way.
Thanks for joining us again on Second Act TV. Want to welcome back Sandy Weiner, the founder of Last First Date and the author of Choice Points in Dating. Thanks for being here again, Sandy.
Thank you, Soka.
Sandy, today a topic that I think we probably all have dealt with at one point or another, and that's mixed messages. What specifically are mixed messages in dating? Because this is something so frustrating that I wanted to have a deeper conversation with you because we get lots of comments in this regard as well. So let's talk about that. What are mixed messages in dating?
Yeah, there's tons of them. A couple of them really, I think they all kind of fall under the category of when somebody tells you one thing and does another, or shows you one thing but acts a different way. So, for example, somebody says they want to see you again after a great date, but they don't follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Or they say, oh, I can plan a future with you. I can see you as my future spouse, but they don't plan future anything.
Mm-hmm.
And a third mixed signal that's pretty common is when that first or second date is amazing. Like you really
Mm-hmm.
felt that connection, and then you never hear from them again. And you're like, wait, I thought we were connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And that one happens, I would say, a ton of the time.
It does. And it is frustrating, and it just leaves you wondering, well, you get very insecure. It can bring out your insecurities. And, it's important that we recognize and understand it. So what do these signals mean? Let's talk about that.
Right. So they can mean that the person isn't that into you,
Mm-hmm.
but they're afraid to let you know. Like we have talked before about how hard it is for people to communicate in dating. And another thing it could mean is they liked you, but they're not ready for a relationship. They might think
Mm-hmm.
they are. They might be on the dating site because they think they're totally ready, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And the third common reason that the explanation for signals that are mixed is that this person has an avoidant attachment style. This is an insecure attachment, and we can talk a little bit more about
Mm-hmm.
that. But as soon as you get close, they pull away. And this is a common dynamic in relationships. It's actually what causes people to be really attracted because they have this deprivation. There's
Mm-hmm.
this thing they can't have, and then they get
Mm-hmm.
it, and then they don't want it, and they just like, oh, it's crazy making.
That, yeah, we will talk about that some more. And the first one you brought up is, to me, I think maybe that is the most common. They're just not that into you, but they have some sort of inner struggle themselves that they keep going and giving you these mixed messages and keeping you on the peripheral. So let's look at that a little bit deeper. If they're not into you, what are some of the signs to look for?
Yeah, so I think one of the top signs is a person forgets that they made plans to see you, and they're really attentive when they're with you. They're telling you that you're amazing, but then they stop communicating for days or weeks
Mm,
when they're not with you.
yeah.
And if you want something else, then don't settle for somebody who's great in person, but then gets flaky when you're not together.
And this is very common also when you're dealing with somebody who just lost, or well, hopefully not just lost a spouse, but widow, widower, or a nasty divorce or an ex-spouse in the picture.
Those are the people who are not really ready for a relationship, even though they think they are. That same category of the person that you just talked about, the recently widowed or divorced or separated, somebody dealing with mental illness in the family,
Mm,
or an aging parent, or an angry ex, or he's going through court, or she's got something going on at work.
mhm.
These are not bad people. These are people who think they're ready. They
Yeah.
think they have the time, but then something else is really occupying them. And, so that person was into them. They thought they were ready, but they still were tethered to too many things that really, they could not prioritize you in the
Mhm.
relationship.
That's a really, really difficult point, I think. How, how much leeway do you give someone who is a great person, and how much, leeway do you give yourself to not get tied up in all that drama?
I mean, I think you have to know yourself. Like, do you want to be in a relationship with somebody who's going through big drama?
Hmm.
And I personally would not want to do that. I
Hmm.
I could not handle that in my life anymore. Probably years ago when I first started dating after my divorce, I would have probably
Hmm.
put up with a lot more stuff. But I think it's not because they're bad people. It's because they are just engrossed in stuff. Even people who have needy children who will drop you
Yeah.
in a minute to go to their kids. I mean, you have to be clear about who you are, what you need.
Hmm.
And if it's not going to work, don't get so involved emotionally that it's going to be devastating in
Hmm.
6 months or a year or 2 years when that person still has not made you a priority.
Yeah, great advice. You said avoidant attachment style, and that always gets my attention. I just, since I started second act, learned about the attachment styles, and Dr. Gary Salyer has been here numerous times. So enlightening. So let's talk about that. The avoidant attachment style. What are the signs there? What?
Yeah, so a basic overview of attachment styles is if you grew up in a secure home where you felt loved and seen and heard and cared for and your emotions mattered, then
Hmm.
you likely will have a secure attachment style. You'll be better at communicating your emotions. You'll be attracted to people who actually show up for you, not people who don't, and
Hmm.
who give you little breadcrumbs because you're used to having your needs met. But most of us did not grow up this way. So we
Hmm.
end up with the insecure attachment styles. And one of the two most popular are avoidant, and the
Hmm.
other one is anxious attachment.
Anxious.
So an avoidant attachment is somebody who kind of grew up having to take care of themselves. They
Hmm.
didn't get a lot of attention. They had to kind of be an island unto themselves. And
Hmm.
you see a lot of very independent people who grew up that way and are successful at work. But when it comes to relationships, they're still isolating, they're still protecting themselves. And so if you come on to them and you're coming on as having emotions and you like them,
Yeah.
they're going to start freaking out and pulling away. So
Mm.
they may show you in the beginning, oh my God, I think you're great. But now
Yeah.
you're reciprocating. No, thank
Yeah,
you.
something's wrong
Goodbye.
here. Yeah.
Too scary.
Hmm.
So that is crazy making. And there
Hmm.
are ways to navigate this, but it's hard. And
Yeah.
so you want to really be careful about getting involved with somebody who's showing you this kind of attachment and isn't working on it and
Hmm.
being responsible for how they're showing up.
Right. Well, and look for the signs in yourself, because chances are that you are have an avoidant or an anxious attachment style. I know I do, not avoidant but anxious, and that's
Mhm.
another huge revelation. So when you talk about this topic, we can learn a lot about ourselves. So yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. So what do we do about it? What can we do about mixed signals, especially when we're on the receiving end?
Yeah. So before I get to that, I want to say that it is common to have mixed feelings yourself or
Hmm.
uncertainty or indecisiveness when you're dating somebody until
Hmm.
you've really gotten to know each other well, until you both feel secure
Hmm.
with each other. So that's within the so-called normal range. But when
Hmm.
those mixed feelings lead to ambiguity after the relationship has
Mm.
progressed, then you can have lots of anxiety. You were just talking about your anxious attachment. You can have fears and you can feel like you lost all control because there's so much ambiguity that you don't know what to trust. And so here's what you can do about it. You can handle these mixed signals in a certain way that gives you back your power.
Well, let's talk about that. If you're on
Yeah.
the receiving end, how do we deal with this?
Yeah, so you do need to be really clear on your must-haves and deal breakers. You need to know what are the qualities that you absolutely must have and won't tolerate in a partner, because if you have that clear
Mhm.
list, and I go into detail about it in my book, and I've talked about it a lot on my website, there's a way to create this list where it's not just a list of external qualities, but it's
Mhm.
actually the qualities that you need to make this work. And if you have one deal breaker, it will not
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
So recognize those deal breakers right away. So if, let's say, you need a relationship with somebody who's actually available
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, physically, and in all ways to be there to develop
Mm-hmm.
a relationship, and you're seeing that this person has too many fears or has too many things that are pulling them,
Mm-hmm.
like we discussed before, it's
Yeah.
not going to work. And you just graciously say, it seems like you're too busy for a relationship and it's not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So best of luck to you. Like, just nip it in the
Yeah.
bud.
Well, and that's, it's hard to do when we really like someone and we want it to work, and then we start making all these excuses. Well, and then you say here, communicate clearly. What does
Yeah.
that mean exactly?
Yeah. So when it comes to mixed signals and you're getting confused, be
Mm-hmm.
direct, ask questions, and really be clear about how you feel, what you need. The example I just gave before is I'm looking for a relationship where
Mm-hmm.
somebody is prioritizing dating.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like you are. So I'm going to move on. That's clear, not
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel? Do you want to be in a relationship? Those questions don't really get you anywhere. It's actually very disempowering because now you're relying on them and they may not even know, like we
Mm-hmm.
said before, they may think they're ready. They may think they're showing up, but you're not feeling it. And so that's part of the direct communication. The other thing is, like, if a person barely ever texts or never calls you and
Mm-hmm.
they seem to be interested, tell them, I would love to hear from you more often. Can we text daily?
Mm-hmm.
Just a good morning text would mean so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens. Because otherwise they hate calling or they hate texting, but you don't know that. You think they just are dating other people. Like, you make up
Right.
stories.
Yep.
So be open to hearing feedback. Be open to hearing, hey, I hate to text. I do like you. Does it work for you if we do FaceTime once a week? Whatever it is, but figure it out, negotiate, and let them know what you need.
And then see if they can meet you at least halfway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and not
So,
get defensive.
and not get defensive. Exactly. Exactly. I love this here. Let's go into this deeper as well. Ask yourself high value questions. What does that mean?
Yeah, we often ask ourselves low value questions like, why did that person do that? Why did they
Mm,
not text me?
okay.
Why did they show up on that date looking really interested and then ended up on a plane to Cancun when they
Yeah.
were supposed to be on a date with me? Why did they do that? We
Mm-hmm.
don't know why they do that. We
Mm-hmm.
can't answer why they do that unless we ask them directly, but we can also ask ourselves high value questions like, do I really want to be with somebody who gives me mixed messages?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really want to be with somebody who blows hot and cold? Am I really feeling anxious in this person's presence? I had a client who, she was so anxious, she ended up getting a prescription for some anti-anxiety
Oh.
medication because she was so anxious with this guy. And she had just started to get to know him. And she goes, oh my God, this isn't working. I'm like, I am so anxious. And it turned out that they both really weren't into dating each other. And now they're friends. And she's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely happy to be his friend. But the prospect of being in a relationship with him was so disconcerting for her nervous
Wow.
system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question. We can always answer our own high value questions, but not stay in those low value. Why did they do that?
Yeah.
What's wrong with people? I don't know. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Who
Is
cares?
this working for you?
Yeah. Well, and to the point that you just mentioned, the example. I mean, it could be that she's bringing issues to the table as well, or if you're feeling that way, that you're bringing your own issues to the table, and that's something worth exploring as well, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, always take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility of what you're doing and
Mm-hmm.
how you're feeling. And if you're bringing a lot of anxiety to every date, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
turn people off. I mean, I met
Right.
somebody recently through a dating app, and we were just talking about a club that we both belong to. So he showed up at my club last night, actually. And he said, oh, so now that you see that I'm not crazy and I'm not an axe murderer, do you want to exchange phone numbers? I was just like, okay, but I really wasn't interested in dating him. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be really clear with him. This just happened. But when he got home, he texted me and said, I hope I didn't push you to share your phone number or something. And I was just like, I don't do things that I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he showed a lot of insecurity in how he
Mm-hmm.
followed up. And so it's like, don't apologize. Like he was apologizing. Don't
Mm-hmm.
apologize for asking for somebody's number. If you just own it, own what you
Mm-hmm.
do. Don't give a message like I'm interested, but I'm not, but only if you are. And, you know, be
Oh,
clear about who
yeah.
you are, what you need, what you want. And if you're exhibiting that kind of insecurity, then do the inner work and
Mm-hmm.
learn how to communicate more clearly, learn how
Yeah.
to be more sure of your choices, which is what my whole book is about.
Yes, yes, exactly. Choice point there. I always point wrong. No,
Choice
it's a
points.
great, yeah, it's a great book. It
Thank you.
just gives you a template of the dating scene on so many aspects. So yeah, do pick it up if you're out there and have all these questions. So, Sandy, we're coming to the end now. Closing thoughts on this. I think that no relationship is worth, if you have doubts in a relationship where you're constantly getting mixed messages, whether it's in the beginning, middle. I mean, we're pretty much talking about the beginning now, but it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. That sometimes you just, in order not to have mixed messages, you just have to walk away. Do you have anything more positive?
Well, I would say it takes a lot for people who are used to giving people second chances
Mm-hmm.
and really just being so kind and compassionate and always wanting to hear the other person's side. It's a lovely trait, but when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to dating, when you give all those second chances, it usually comes back to bite you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say if there's ambiguity from the beginning, how a relationship begins is how it ends. Don't let it go so far that you're going to torture yourself in the relationship, because these mixed messages almost always repeat themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and it is so disconcerting to your nervous system.
Right.
So the benefit of the doubt, there's usually, if there's doubt, don't give it a benefit.
I like that. I like that. I've
Yeah.
never heard that. If there's a doubt, don't give it a benefit. Great, great words. We'll close on that, Sandy. As I said, we'll link to everything, especially your website, so people can get a hold of you directly. And I look forward to having you back again soon on Second Act TV.